The transatlantic flight from Geneva touched down at JFK 3 weeks ahead of schedule. The complex corporate restructuring audit I had been contracted to execute for a Swiss logistics conglomerate concluded under budget and entirely ahead of the projected timeline. I did not notify my family of my early return. Announcements generate unnecessary logistical friction and meaningless social obligations. I simply ordered a black car, returned to my primary residence, and intended to sleep for 14 uninterrupted hours to reset my circadian rhythm. The anomaly presented itself precisely 12 minutes after I unlocked my front door. It was not a physical intrusion, it was a digital alert. I maintain a Level 4 LexisNexis identity monitoring protocol, an occupational necessity when you spend your career dismantling offshore shell companies for federal regulators and corporate syndicates. The automated system pushed a high-priority, encrypted notification to my smartphone the moment my device reconnected to my home network. A new employer identification number, EIN, had been registered with the Internal Revenue Service, explicitly cross-linking my Social Security number as the primary medical beneficiary of a newly incorporated 501c3 nonprofit organization. I did not unpack my suitcase. I left the luggage resting on the marble floor of the foyer, walked directly into my home office, and booted up my secure workstation. I bypassed standard public search engines, utilized my credentials, and logged directly into the State Division of Corporations database. The entity was registered as the Clara Vance Foundation for Glioblastoma Research. My name is Clara Vance. I do not have glioblastoma. I do not have cancer of any kind. My most recent comprehensive medical evaluation, conducted 4 weeks ago in Geneva for high-tier corporate insurance underwriting purposes, confirmed I am in optimal peak physical health. I pulled the incorporation documents and the initial Form 1023 tax-exempt filings. The registering agent, the primary board member, and the sole financial signatory on the associated commercial bank accounts was Elise Vance, my younger sister. The architecture of her fraud was breathtakingly sloppy from a forensic standpoint, yet entirely functional for its intended, emotionally vulnerable audience. Elise had spent the last 4 years attempting to launch a luxury lifestyle and wellness brand that was currently drowning in uncollateralized mezzanine debt. She needed a massive, immediate liquidity injection to prevent her private creditors from forcing her into involuntary Chapter 7 bankruptcy. Instead of liquidating her own failing assets, she had chosen to mathematically liquidate my hypothetical mortality. I initiated a deep-dive forensic trace on the Foundation's digital footprint. It took me less than 45 minutes to map her entire criminal operation. Elise had constructed a highly emotive, heavily search engine optimized website detailing my brave, tragic, and rapidly declining battle with terminal brain cancer. She had stolen photos from my recent corporate ski trip to the Swiss Alps, utilizing photo editing software to apply heavy desaturation filters, digitally altering the shadows under my eyes to make me appear pale, frail, and actively dying. The website featured a direct payment gateway linked to a Stripe commercial merchant account that she unilaterally controlled. The primary event highlighted on the landing page was the Breath of Hope Luxury Gala, a black tie fundraising dinner. The gala was scheduled for tonight. The venue was the Grand Ballroom of the St. Regis Hotel. Tickets were priced at $1,500 per plate. According to the live progress bar on her donation portal, she had already successfully collected $152,000 from corporate sponsors, empathetic socialites, and our own extended family members. Furthermore, the site listed high-value, silent auction items, including a chartered yacht trip and a Rolex Daytona, donated by local businesses under the false pretense of charity. A weaker individual would have reacted with biological outrage. They would have called their sister, screaming into the phone, demanding she take the website down. They would have rushed to the hotel in sweatpants to cause a public hysterical scene. I do not engage in hysteria. Hysteria provides the opposition with an opportunity to reframe the narrative. If I confronted her privately, Elise would dissolve the corporation, claim it was a misunderstanding or a preemptive medical fund, and attempt to quietly return the capital to avoid prosecution. She would escape the institutional consequences of her actions. Charity fraud exceeding $50,000 is a Class C felony. Utilizing internet payment gateways to solicit those funds elevates the crime to federal wire fraud. I picked up my encrypted phone and dialed a direct, unlisted number. "Thorne!" A deep, gravelly voice answered on the second ring. It was Marcus Thorne, the chief of the White Collar Crime Bureau for the district attorney's office. We had spent the last 3 years collaborating on a joint task force dismantling municipal embezzlement rings. We did not exchange pleasantries. "Marcus," I stated, my voice completely devoid of emotional variance, "I require your physical presence at the St. Regis Hotel tonight at 8 o'clock. I am currently reviewing trial prep for the municipal union case, Clara," Thorne replied, the sound of turning pages audible in the background. "Is this regarding the offshore routing tables we discussed on Tuesday?" "No," I corrected him. "This is regarding an active, in-progress felony wire fraud and grand larceny operation occurring within your immediate jurisdiction. The perpetrator has currently secured over $150,000 under fraudulent pretenses. I have the entire digital paper trail, the routing numbers, and the forged incorporation documents secured on an encrypted flash drive. The primary suspect will be holding a microphone on a stage in front of 200 wealthy donors, establishing undeniable, publicly recorded intent to defraud." There was a brief pause on the line. The sound of turning pages stopped entirely. "Who is the suspect?" Thorne asked, his tone shifting into the sharp, predatory focus of a career prosecutor. "My sister," I replied, staring at the desaturated, tragic photo of myself on the fraudulent website. "She is currently hosting a luxury memorial gala to fund my terminal illness. I intend to make a miraculous recovery on her stage. I will have a tactical economic crimes unit on standby in the loading dock," Thorne confirmed without hesitation. "I will meet you in the lobby at 7:45. I terminated the call. I looked at the digital clock on my secondary monitor. It was currently 4 in the afternoon. I had less than 4 hours to prepare. I walked into my master bedroom and opened my cedar closet. If I was going to attend a luxury gala celebrating my own impending death, I was not going to arrive looking like a victim. I bypassed the standard business attire. I selected a floor-length, backless emerald silk gown, a garment engineered to project absolute, undeniable vitality and unyielding power. I did not feel sorrow for Elise. I felt the cold, mechanical satisfaction of a forensic auditor about to close a heavily compromised ledger. The grand ballroom of the St. Regis Hotel is an environment engineered to extract capital from high-net-worth individuals through the deployment of manufactured prestige. At 7:45, I bypassed the valet and entered the lobby through the private residential elevators. I wore the floor-length emerald silk gown. I did not wear jewelry. I did not require reflective surfaces to project authority. The structural integrity of my presence was sufficient. Marcus Thorne was waiting near the cloakroom. He wore a dark, conservative suit that immediately identified him as institutional authority, rather than a gala attendee. He did not hold a champagne flute. He held a leather folio containing the preliminary arrest warrants he had expedited through a duty judge less than an hour prior. "The Economic Crimes Unit is stationed in the service corridors," Thorne stated, his voice a low, gravelly hum that barely registered above the ambient string quartet playing in the foyer. "We have unmarked vans at the loading dock and the primary exit. I reviewed the digital forensic packet you transmitted. The wire fraud is unambiguous. She routed the Stripe merchant payments directly into a commercial checking account explicitly tied to her failing lifestyle brand, bypassing the 501c3 escrow entirely. It is a textbook commingling of funds. I reached into my clutch and handed him a secure, encrypted flash drive. The drive contains the raw network packet captures, proving the IP address of the device that registered the foundation matches her residential router. I confirmed. The transaction purely logistical. It also contains the metadata of the photoshopped medical images, proving premeditation and intent to deceive the public. Thorne pocketed the drive. The statutory threshold for aggravated grand larceny in this jurisdiction is $1 million. She is currently at $152,000. It is a Class C felony, carrying a maximum sentence of 15 years, plus the federal wire fraud implications. Are you prepared to initiate the confrontation? I am not initiating a confrontation, Marcus, I corrected him, turning my gaze toward the heavy mahogany doors of the grand ballroom. I am executing an audit. Let her complete the solicitation. We wait until she formally accepts the capital on stage. We entered the ballroom, remaining in the deep shadows near the audio-visual control tables at the rear of the venue. The scale of Elise's fraud was a testament to her narcissistic ambition. She had spared no expense, subsidizing the overhead costs of the event, utilizing the very donations she was actively collecting. Crystal chandeliers illuminated 50 circular tables covered in heavy white linen. Ice sculptures depicting doves in mid-flight slowly melted on the buffet stations. The silent auction tables were laden with high-value luxury goods, a pristine Rolex Daytona, a signed lithograph, a voucher for a chartered yacht in the Mediterranean. Every item represented a local business defrauded into donating inventory under the false pretense of pediatric glioblastoma research. At 8:30, the ambient lighting dimmed. A localized spotlight snapped onto the main stage. The low murmur of 200 wealthy donors, corporate sponsors, and extended family members silenced immediately. Elise walked onto the stage. She wore a muted, slate-gray evening gown, intentionally selected to project an aura of somber, dignified suffering. Her hair was styled to look slightly disheveled. She approached the microphone stand, gripping it with both hands, lowering her head to allow the spotlight to catch the deliberate, manufactured tears welling in her eyes. "Thank you all for coming tonight," Elise began, her voice trembling with perfectly calibrated theatrical fragility. "We are here for the breath of hope. We are here for my sister, Clara." A collective, empathetic sigh rippled through the audience. I observed several socialites in the front row reaching for their linen napkins to dab their eyes. "Clara is currently in a specialized facility in Switzerland," Elise lied smoothly, the perjury flowing from her lips with the practiced ease of a chronic manipulator. "The glioblastoma is aggressive. The doctors have given us a very narrow window. She is too weak to travel, too weak to be here tonight, but she is fighting. She is fighting every single day." Elise paused, allowing a single tear to trace down her cheek. It was a masterful performance, a weaponized display of grief designed exclusively to bypass the logical defenses of the high-net-worth individuals sitting in the room. She was monetizing my hypothetical death with terrifying efficiency. "Because of your incredible generosity," Elise continued, her voice rising in a crescendo of manufactured hope, "we have surpassed our initial goal. Tonight, we are officially establishing the Clara Vance Foundation with a foundational endowment to fund experimental clinical trials." 2 event staff members walked onto the stage carrying a massive, oversized novelty check. The amount printed in bold black ink was $150,000. The pay to the order of line read, "Clara Vance Glioblastoma Research." Elise placed her hand on the edge of the giant check, smiling through her tears as the audience erupted into a standing ovation. Flashbulbs from hired event photographers illuminated the stage, documenting the exact moment the felony was cemented in the public record. She had legally accepted the fraudulent funds in front of 200 witnesses. The intent to defraud was now an undeniable physical fact. "The transaction is complete," Thorne noted quietly beside me, adjusting his suit jacket. "The federal threshold is met. Do we proceed?" "We proceed," I replied. I stepped out from the shadows of the audio-visual tables and into the illuminated center aisle of the grand ballroom. I did not walk with the fragile, trembling gait of a terminal cancer patient. I walked with the precise, unyielding biomechanics of a corporate auditor, advancing to terminate a compromised asset. The emerald silk gown caught the ambient light, a stark, undeniable projection of peak physical vitality. Thorne walked exactly 1 pace behind my right shoulder, the physical embodiment of the state's penal code trailing in my wake. I moved down the center aisle. The standing ovation was still echoing through the cavernous room. The attendees in the back rows were the first to notice the anomaly. They turned, their expressions shifting rapidly from empathetic applause to profound, paralyzing confusion as they recognized the woman walking past them. The whispers began immediately, a rapid, cascading wave of shock rippling forward through the tables. I kept my eyes locked entirely on the stage. The trap was now fully operational. The applause died not all at once, but in a cascading, systemic failure of social momentum. The attendees seated at the rear tables were the first to process the visual anomaly. They stopped clapping. They lowered their champagne flutes. They stared at the woman walking down the center aisle. I did not walk with the fragile, trembling gait of a terminal patient in cognitive decline. I moved with the precise, unyielding biomechanics of a corporate auditor advancing to terminate a compromised asset. The emerald silk gown caught the ambient light, projecting an undeniable metric of peak physical vitality. As I progressed toward the front of the ballroom, the silence propagated forward like a localized vacuum, extinguishing the standing ovation table by table. By the time I reached the primary sponsor seating directly beneath the stage, the cavernous room was entirely soundless. Elise stood at the exact center of the stage. The localized spotlight illuminated her slate-gray evening gown and her meticulously styled, disheveled hair. She was holding the edge of the massive novelty check with both hands, looking out at the audience, expecting to absorb their continued adulation. Instead, her eyes tracked the leading edge of the silence, scanning downward until they locked onto my position at the base of the stairs. The physiological collapse of a cornered fraudster is a rapid, uncontrollable biological sequence. The manufactured tears dried instantly. The blood drained from her facial capillaries, leaving her skin the color of damp ash. Her jaw slackened, breaking the carefully curated expression of dignified suffering. Her fingers lost their fine motor function. The oversized foam check, representing $152,000 of stolen capital, slipped from her grasp and hit the polished wooden stage with a hollow, echoing impact. I did not break my stride. I bypassed the floral arrangements and ascended the 3 carpeted steps to the stage. Marcus Thorne remained at the base of the stairs, a silent, immovable anchor of state authority. He did not cross his arms. He simply stood with his hands resting casually over the leather folio containing the expedited arrest warrants, his eyes continuously scanning the perimeter to ensure the tactical unit in the service corridors remained undetected until the optimal moment. I walked directly to the microphone stand. Elise instinctively backed away, her breathing becoming shallow and erratic, her eyes darting frantically toward the heavy velvet curtains concealing the kitchen exits. She was entirely trapped within the center of her own fabricated spotlight, the architecture of her grift crumbling in real time. I adjusted the microphone. The high-fidelity audio system broadcast the microscopic sound of the metal stand shifting, a sharp metallic click that resonated through the sprawling ballroom. "Good evening," I stated. My voice was amplified cleanly, delivered with a flat, entirely level volume, devoid of gratitude, sorrow, or familial warmth. "I apologize for the unannounced alteration to the evening's scheduling parameters. My name is Clara Vance. I am the stated beneficiary of this fundraising gala." The silence in the room compressed further, becoming a physical weight. 200 high-net-worth individuals, corporate officers, and extended family members stared at the stage, their cognitive processes violently struggling to reconcile the tragic, terminal narrative they had just purchased with the undeniable physical reality standing behind the podium. "I returned from a corporate auditing contract in Geneva 4 hours ago," I continued, projecting the unyielding data directly to the defrauded investors. "I do not have glioblastoma. I do not have a terminal illness. My most recent comprehensive medical evaluation, conducted by independent underwriters, confirms optimal physical health. The narrative presented to you tonight is a fabricated construct, engineered entirely for financial extraction." A sharp collective gasp rippled through the front tables. The CEO of a local logistics firm, who had donated the chartered yacht for the silent auction, placed his bidding paddle flat on the linen tablecloth, his expression hardening into pure corporate liability assessment. I did not acknowledge the rising panic in the room. I kept my focus on the microphone, delivering the forensic breakdown. "The Clara Vance Foundation is not a registered charitable organization," I detailed, dismantling the mechanism of Elise's fraud piece by piece. "The employer. Identification number utilized on your promotional materials and tax-deductible receipts was generated digitally 72 hours ago. The Stripe payment gateway processing your electronic donations does not route to a medical escrow account. It routes directly to a commercial checking account registered to Elise Vance's failing lifestyle brand, an entity currently facing severe uncollateralized mezzanine debt. She has utilized my identity to unilaterally execute a liquidity injection." Elise let out a suffocated, high-pitched sound. "Clara, stop!" she hissed, stepping forward in a desperate, uncoordinated attempt to block the microphone. Her theatrical grief had been entirely replaced by the raw animal panic of impending institutional destruction. "It's a surprise medical fund. It's for preventative care. You are ruining everything. Turn the microphone off." She reached for the primary audio cable. I did not step back. I simply placed my left hand firmly against her wrist, applying precise downward pressure to neutralize her movement without escalating into a physical altercation. The microphone remained active, broadcasting her frantic whispers to the entire room. "I am not ruining anything, Elise," I corrected her smoothly, my voice cutting through her panic with surgical precision. "I am providing a mandatory compliance update to your investors." I released her wrist and turned my attention back to the paralyzed audience. "The solicitation of funds under the false pretense of terminal illness constitutes felony wire fraud. Because the sum collected tonight exceeds the statutory threshold, the jurisdiction elevates immediately from a civil dispute to a state criminal matter." I gestured calmly toward the base of the stairs. "Therefore, I have invited a secondary speaker to conclude the evening's presentation. Please direct your attention to Marcus Thorne, the chief of the White Collar Crime Bureau for the District Attorney's Office." Marcus Thorne did not ascend the carpeted stairs with the urgency of a patrol officer. He walked onto the stage with the measured, inevitable pace of a systemic consequence. The leather folio containing the expedited arrest warrants remained securely tucked under his left arm. He bypassed Elise entirely, stepping directly to the microphone stand I had just vacated. The transition of authority was seamless. I stepped back, integrating myself into the deep shadows at the edge of the stage. My role as the forensic auditor concluded. The operational phase now belonged exclusively to the penal system. Ladies and gentlemen, Thorne's voice echoed through the high-fidelity audio system, replacing my clinical breakdown with the gravelly, resonant weight of the district attorney's office. As stated, I am the chief of the White Collar Crime Bureau. The event you are currently attending is not a sanctioned charitable gala. It is an active, premeditated crime scene. The solicitation of capital utilizing fraudulent medical claims and unauthorized digital payment gateways constitutes grand larceny in the second degree and federal wire fraud. We have monitored the electronic routing of the donations process this evening. The funds were not deposited into a 501c3 escrow. They were diverted directly to a commercial entity to satisfy private debt. The psychological shift in the grand ballroom was instantaneous and brutal. The empathy that had previously filled the room vaporized, replaced by the acute, highly aggressive self-preservation of the ultra-wealthy. These were not individuals accustomed to being defrauded. High-net-worth donors do not tolerate financial humiliation. The CEO of the logistics firm immediately pulled out his phone, bypassing his standard banking apps to dial his private wealth manager directly, issuing a hard stop on the transaction. Across the 50 circular tables, the simultaneous glow of smartphone screens illuminated the dark room as attendees initiated mass chargebacks and instructed their corporate counsels to file immediate fraud reports. The financial infrastructure of Elise's operation was being dismantled in real time by the very people she had attempted to exploit. Elise stood paralyzed in the center of the stage. The slate-gray evening gown selected to project dignified suffering now merely highlighted her absolute isolation. She looked at Thorne, her cognitive functions failing to process the speed at which her reality had collapsed. "This is a misunderstanding," she whispered, her voice lacking the amplification of the microphone, rendering it pathetic and entirely ineffective against the institutional machinery closing in around her. "I was going to use the money for her. I was going to help her. You can't do this here, not in front of everyone." Thorne did not acknowledge her plea. He did not negotiate with suspects in the middle of an active raid. He simply raised his right hand and gave a sharp two-finger gesture toward the rear of the ballroom. The heavy mahogany doors at the main entrance, as well as the concealed acoustic doors leading to the service corridors, swung open simultaneously. 12 investigators from the Economic Crimes Unit entered the venue. They did not wear tactical riot gear. They wore dark windbreakers with the district attorney's seal printed on the back. They moved with silent, synchronized efficiency. 2 investigators immediately secured the audio-visual control tables, physically disconnecting the laptops managing the Stripe payment gateways to preserve the digital evidence chain. 4 investigators moved to the silent auction tables, systematically impounding the Rolex Daytona, the signed lithographs, and the physical bid sheets as primary evidence of grand larceny. 2 senior investigators ascended the stage. They flanked Elise, physically blocking her line of sight to the exits. "Elise Vance," the lead investigator stated, his voice a flat, practiced monotone that offered zero room for interpretation. "You are under arrest for grand larceny, scheme to defraud, and criminal impersonation. Turn around and place your hands behind your back." Elise's biological panic reached its apex. She stumbled backward, her high heels catching on the carpeted stage. But the secondary investigator caught her arm, applying a standard compliance hold. He did not exert excessive force. He simply utilized mechanical leverage to guide her wrists together behind her back. The sharp, metallic ratcheting sound of the heavy steel handcuffs locking into place was amplified by the ambient acoustics of the silent ballroom. It was the definitive physical punctuation mark ending her luxury lifestyle brand. "You have the right to remain silent," the investigator continued, reciting the Miranda warning with bureaucratic precision as he checked the tension of the steel cuffs. "Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." Elise began to hyperventilate. The mascara she had carefully applied to simulate tears of grief was now running down her face in dark, jagged streaks of genuine terror. She looked out at the 200 donors, the investors she had planned to leverage to save her failing company. They were not looking at her with sympathy. They were looking at her with the cold, litigious fury of defrauded creditors. Several attendees were actively recording the arrest on their smartphones, guaranteeing her permanent social and professional execution within the city's elite circles. I remained in the shadows, observing the absolute destruction of my sister's fraudulent empire. I did not feel a biological surge of vindication, nor did I feel the hollow sting of familial betrayal. Empathy is a vulnerability that allows parasites to attach to your financial infrastructure. By treating my identity and my hypothetical mortality as an exploitable resource, Elise had categorized herself not as a sibling, but as a hostile liability. I had simply applied the standard corporate auditing procedure for neutralizing a liability: isolation, documentation, and institutional eradication. The investigators guided her toward the service stairs. She was forced to walk past the oversized novelty check she had dropped moments prior, which was now being tagged with a bright red evidence sticker by the Economic Crimes Unit. The descent down the service stairs marked the permanent conclusion of Elise's participation in high society. She was not escorted through the grand lobby where the valet parked luxury vehicles. She was guided through the harsh, fluorescent-lit concrete corridors of the hotel's loading dock. The transition from the orchestrated prestige of the grand ballroom to the sterile reality of the penal system was immediate and absolute. 2 unmarked transit vans belonging to the district attorney's Economic Crimes Unit were idling near the industrial dumpsters, their engines rumbling in the cold night air. The lead investigator placed his hand on the crown of her head, guiding her physically into the rear compartment of the primary transport vehicle. The heavy steel mesh door slammed shut, the mechanical latch engaging with a sharp, metallic clack, severing her connection to the wealth she had attempted to steal. She was transported directly to the central processing precinct, where her slate-gray evening gown was confiscated and replaced with a standard-issue nylon jumpsuit. Inside the ballroom, Marcus Thorne remained at the microphone. He did not offer apologies for the disruption. He delivered administrative instructions with the cold precision of a federal auditor. He directed the 200 high-net-worth attendees to form organized lines at the audio-visual control tables. There, investigators were systematically logging their contact information, corporate affiliations, and initial donation amounts to construct the foundational victim registry for the upcoming grand jury indictments. The Gala, CEO of the logistics firm, acting with the ruthless efficiency of a defrauded senior creditor, immediately offered his own corporate legal team to assist the district attorney in expediting the asset recovery process. He demanded a full forensic accounting of the Stripe gateway, ensuring his capital would be returned. I did not linger to watch the wealthy donors provide their sworn statements. My operational objective was completely fulfilled. I walked out of the ballroom through a secondary fire exit, bypassed the main lobby entirely, and stepped out into the cool night air. The black car I had scheduled upon my arrival at JFK was idling at the curb, exactly where I had requested. I entered the insulated passenger cabin and instructed the driver to return to my primary residence. The emerald silk gown had served its tactical purpose. The anomaly had been identified, isolated, and eradicated. It was time to sleep. The legal dismantling of Elise Vance was swift, unyielding, and entirely documented on the public record. The district attorney's office did not offer a lenient plea agreement. The forensic digital packet I had provided was absolute and mathematically undeniable. It contained the specific IP routing logs proving she had registered the fake 501c3 from her personal laptop, the digital metadata of the altered medical photographs proving premeditation, and the direct financial transfer logs linking the Stripe payment gateway directly to her failing corporate accounts. Furthermore, the 200 high-net-worth individuals she had defrauded represented a massive locus of political and economic power within the city. They applied immense institutional pressure to ensure maximum statutory penalties were pursued without hesitation. Facing up to 15 years for aggravated grand larceny and federal wire fraud, Elise's defense attorney advised her that attempting a trial would guarantee her absolute destruction. A jury would be presented with the audio recording of her theatrical weeping on stage, immediately followed by the forensic proof that her sister was simultaneously executing complex corporate audits in Geneva. The juxtaposition of her perjury against the empirical data offered zero room for reasonable doubt. The prosecution possessed the physical novelty check, covered in her fingerprints, as Exhibit A. Elise accepted a structured plea deal. She pleaded guilty to grand larceny in the second degree and schemed to defraud in the first degree. The presiding judge, noting the exceptionally predatory nature of monetizing a fabricated terminal illness to subsidize a lifestyle brand, sentenced her to 48 months in a state correctional facility. The sentence carried a mandatory restitution order, legally compelling her to repay the $152,000, plus municipal fines. Because she was incarcerated and her commercial accounts were frozen by federal warrant, her lifestyle and wellness brand immediately defaulted on its mezzanine debt. Her private creditors executed their liens within 72 hours. Her inventory was seized, her leased commercial space was vacated, and her corporate entity was forced into involuntary Chapter 7 bankruptcy. She lost her company, her freedom, and her reputation in a single, perfectly executed audit. My life resumed its standard operational parameters. I returned to my secure workstation, accepted a new contract to trace offshore shell companies for a European syndicate, and continued accumulating capital through legitimate, highly specialized labor. The automated identity monitoring protocol remained active, perpetually scanning the digital infrastructure for any unauthorized utilization of my Social Security number. The perimeter was entirely secure, fortified by advanced encryption and a total absence of familial trust. The Breath of Hope website was seized by the Department of Justice, its landing page permanently replaced by a stark federal notification regarding wire fraud and identity theft. The domain eventually expired and vanished into the digital ether. Elise served her time in a standard-issue uniform, entirely stripped of the luxury aesthetics she had valued above structural integrity. She attempted to contact me exactly once from the state facility, utilizing the monitored inmate phone system. I did not accept the charges. I do not negotiate with neutralized liabilities. The ledger was permanently closed, the deficit completely erased. If your sister fabricated a terminal illness, photoshopped your images to make you look like you were dying, and threw a $150,000 luxury gala to secretly pay off her own massive corporate debt, what would you do? Would you call her privately and beg her to take the website down, giving her the chance to hide the stolen money? Or would you put on your best gown, walk into the ballroom with the district attorney, and watch the Economic Crimes Unit put her in handcuffs on stage? Let me know exactly how you would handle this level of biological and financial treason in the comments below. If you appreciated this story of cold, calculated, and institutional justice, drop a like, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next video.